Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Mentalist MGTOW. This is going to be a bit different, mostly because I'm going to be responding to Mr. Brad Wilcox and his Prager U attack on the men of MGTOW. I figure it's high time that I've responded to Mr. Wilcox and his ridiculous claims about men, family, and marriage in the coming generation. Firstly, before I tear into this video with my usual style of candor, that most like to refer to as the no bullshit approach, Mr. Wilcox, I have a question to ask you. As you claim to be an accredited sociologist, where was your cultural relativity to these men that you were addressing? And did you even attempt to understand them outside of your own ethnocentric point of view? Because to me it certainly seems that you did not. And it was this lack of empathy in approaching these men that has led to you being utterly rejected by the entire community of them. None of their, and I say lightly, leadership, if you could ever say that it existed in MGTOW, will ever give you the time of day with you approaching the situation like you have. All this said, let me go ahead and go through Mr. Wilcox's points and present some of the counterpoints of my own on how MGTOW men view these things. Then next time, Mr. Wilcox, maybe you can see past your own nose and do things a bit better. I might suggest that you should make an apology video to MGTOW men everywhere for your utter shaming tactics and the way they decided to live their life. Now, firstly, you've asked, is marriage just a piece of paper? And you've stated that many men are saying this. Well, Mr. Wilcox, when you have a vast majority of people saying something, you should at least take the time to hear them instead of a blanket rejection. This is said under the one exception that if their actions are hurting others, but MGTOW men don't hurt anyone. You also based your entire case on Doug Talby, one man. Now, why should I take the example of a single man when I have piles of empirical evidence to suggest your entire video is hogwash based on the life experience of multitudes of men? That's a snake oil sale. Did you do 2 for 1 this week? Nothing you said about your subject, Mr. Talby, could not be applied to any single man anywhere, and they would be better off for it if they were still single. They would have plenty more prosperity for themselves to enjoy. And think how much more money a single man would have after all these promotions and not having to pay out for a family. Wow. So, how was this married man better off again? You claim marriage has a significant mental health benefit to men. But as divorce rates skyrocket, and 80% of which are initiated by women, there's an astronomical number of suicides from divorced men suffering from the depression that has settled like an ominous black cloud over their lives. I suppose they should seek the provided mental health counseling for divorced men in America. Oh wait, we don't give a shit about men's mental health, or the health of men in general. I guess it shows since there's a Department of Health for Women in the government but not men, and women's cancer research gets over 6 times the federal funding that men's does, but it's not like I'm using empirical facts or anything, right? Let's get back to your theories. Married men work harder. Really? Where's your evidence for that? I could also not help but notice your religious overtone on how going to church makes a man better, and from non-religious people everywhere, go fuck yourself. We don't like people that look down their noses at us from your perceived moral high ground. You stated that men working 400 extra hours a year is a good thing, and you do realize that research everywhere shows that overwork has a negative effect on overall health, stress, and many other things. So how exactly was this an advantage again? Who has ever woken up and said, man, I really want to work a few hundred extra hours without it spawning from a vast amount of financial stress, say from having family you're providing for? No one ever. Employers prefer and promote men who are married. Well, of course they do. Those men can't tell them to fuck off when they're mistreated because of the responsibility that you've tried to sell as a lauded commodity in this entire video. They have a lack of freedom to walk away from the abuse. Wow, I always wanted to be an indentured servant to my job and family. That sounds totally awesome. Wives motivate their husbands to do better. And you said, and I quote, there is no better encouragement than your spouse. Well, of course they want them to do better. Those of us not living in a fairy tale and have taken the red pill prefer to see this as nagging. No one likes to hear nagging. No one likes to be pressured. Also, women draw identity from the professions of that their husbands hold. So really, they're just pushing for their own selfish interest and wanting social status. Basically, men get used. No thanks. In short, I don't believe you, or Doug Talby. And I doubt there are as many men advocating marriage these days as there are that if they were being honest man to man, that would tell the next generation of men to run for their lives and not have their wallets ripped out through their assholes. Taking all this aside, even if men didn't want to get married, they have a ridiculous dating standard to live up to by today's women. I mentioned in a previous video entitled Why MGTOW to explain the trend that women find only 20% of men as acceptable dating material these days. So, Mr. Wilcox, no matter how you slice it, the problem is not men or manning up. It's people like you that only see a quarter of the picture, not even a half, and then assume to assign blame. Might I suggest some more thorough research next time? I think that about concludes my response to Mr. Wilcox's video, and in the off chance that Mr. Wilcox actually sees this video, perhaps you'll get off your high horse and walk amongst the men you study next time before you decide to judge us. Thanks for coming to see the Mentalist of MGTOW.